Room with a View is a 1985 British romance film directed by James Ivory, screenplay written by Ruth Prajavala, okay, I screwed that up, and produced by Ismail Merchant. Set in England and Italy, it's about a young woman named Lucy Honeychurch in the restrictive and repressed culture of Edwardian England, and her developing love for a free-spirited young man, George Emerson. Film received universal critical acclaim and was a box office success.
You want me to set this scene up? So, yeah, Lucy and George have met in Italy. They have exchanged a kiss. There's clearly a kinetic energy between them, and it becomes complicated when Lucy leaves Italy, becomes engaged to Cecil, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, and George shows up, and Lucy is convinced she has to get rid of him. She has to jump George. She has to get rid of him. So this big title card comes up that says, lying to George. It's how she's going to get rid of George, and this is the scene.
Okay, so the one thing that I noticed just getting into it, we're sort of starting the scene wide, and then we get closer and closer as the conflict intensifies. That's a very, conventional way of doing a scene, works very well, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's the way to do it. It's sort of the standard way to do it, and it works. But sometimes it's also good to mix it up.
Mr. Emerson. You missed a good match, Miss Bartlett. Miss Honeychurch wishes to speak.
And then the next shot of her sitting down, the camera booms down with her, but it shows she's anxious. She's trying to gather her energy, her thoughts, because this is a big moment for her. So wide shot of him entering. Maggie wants to leave, but she's being pulled back verbally by Lucy, say, stay, I want you to listen in on this. And which gives an opportunity to have the silent watcher in the scene. And we'll notice that throughout, that every once in a while we'll cut to her reacting to what's going on.
Charlotte, please stay. Mr. Emerson, go out of this house and don't come back into it again as long as I live here.
I can't.
No discussion.
He's sort of still in a white.
Go, please. I don't want to call him Mr. Vyse.
You don't mean you're going to marry that man?
He leans forward, leans towards the camera to just emphasize that whatever he's saying, he's really convinced that it's the truth, and obviously it is.
Go, please. I don't want to call him Mr. Vyse.
You don't mean you're going to marry that man?
You're being ridiculous.
Now we are over the shoulder looking at Lucy.
Oh, I would have held back if your Cecil had been a different person. But he's the sort who can't know anyone intimately, least of all a woman.
That's a big statement, and we're fully taking it in this medium close-up. So what he's saying right now is information that the audience is supposed to really process. If we would be wider, yes, it might not sink in as much. If we would be on her, that would have possibly a different effect on how we process this information. It'd be more like how she feels about it as opposed to what he's saying.
Oh, I would have held back if your Cecil had been a different person. But he's the sort who can't know anyone intimately, least of all a woman. He doesn't know what a woman is. He wants you for a possession, something to look at like a painting or an ivory box. Something to own and to display. He doesn't want you to be real and to think and to live.
So now look at her reaction. She's looking away and she's taking this in. What do you think is going through her mind as we play this? She's keeps looking away, keeps looking at him, and she sort of gasps.
He doesn't want you to be real and to think and to live. He doesn't love you. But I love you. I want you to have your own thoughts and ideas and feelings, even when I hold you in my arms.
I think what's going on in her mind right now is, oh shit, he totally got me, but I can't let this. It's like she's in denial is basically what's going on there, right? And she's trying to find the words to come back at him. Now we're breaking this conflict. It gets interrupted because he turns over to Maggie and she looks out and Maggie sees Daniel Day-Lewis. What is he doing? He's wasping. He's swatting.
He's not comfortable in the elements.
Yeah, he doesn't like nature. And let's go a little bit back on that shot. Something that I noticed about this, and I'm sorry, I'm getting really into the details here, but maybe it's stuff worthwhile talking. That as an editor, we do all the time, like when we do these inserts, right? And I learned from last episode, this is an insert because it matters, as opposed to a cutaway, which is trying to hide a cut.
Yes, or providing atmosphere, or helping with the timing.
Good. I just want you to take a look at the action of what he does, like when his action starts and when it ends, and how that sort of coincides with the cutting. So Maggie looks over, he's sort of already swatting a little bit, but the sort of the climax of the swatting is the center of this insert. And then around 1:30, he goes back to looking at his tea that he sort of spilled, and that finishes that motion.
Miss Bartlett, you wouldn't stop us this time, not if you understood. It's our last chance. Do you understand how lucky people are when they find what's right for them?
We could have cut this earlier, or we could have stayed on the shot longer. How, as an editor, do you decide how to use these inserts or any kind of like showing motion, so showing actions? Like there's a beginning, there's a climax, and then you get out of it. There's a payoff. And I think this shot really shows a very well executed cut, in the sense that we're like, just as it starts to become interesting, we're in, and then there's a little payoff of that, which is like the joke with the cup. We saw him spill some stuff, but he didn't know, and now he notices it. And then we're back out. We kind of made our point.
Miss Bartlett, you wouldn't stop us this time, not if you understood. It's our last chance. Do you understand how lucky people are?
And we're not cutting back to Maggie at this point, because she's really the one that brought us into that moment. So we don't care about her reaction to it. We're like back in this conflict. This was just like a little moment of relief, and maybe even proving the point that he's an idiot and that she should marry Cecil. And then we're back in the scene at 1:30, and now we have an over the shoulder where he really is hunched over and like almost in her grill. And let's see what happens there. He goes down, gets on her eye level, which is something you do when you really want somebody to like pay attention to you. But she gets up and moves away.
Cecil, and she'll be his wife shortly. I suppose that's a detail of no importance.
And now we're like in these medium close-ups, back and forth, back and forth.
Explain, it means that nothing must hinder us ever again.
So he's saying something like that we experience true love, right? He's making his point. And Maggie looks away. It seems like that's something that she's also taking in, but she also has a hard time agreeing to. Like a little bit of denial is what that tells me.
Right, and that's also a great tool to have as an editor, is reactions like that of Miss Bartlett, because you can really use them at any time, and that's something that you have more control over than anybody in implementing that performance moment. So you're conveying all this stuff that you're putting on it, which you're right about, but that's a lot of that's because of the timing of when it was put in, and who knows, know, if that is the actual performance or if that was her looking at the sound of the slate or what it could have been.
Right. That could have been shot within the scene time at a completely different time. He could have said something completely different, but it works as a building block here to make a commentary on what's going on, giving the audience clues who is feeling what at this moment. All right, we're at 1:53. Let's keep playing.
To understand that.
He hasn't moved position. He's still down. Oh, now he comes up. 1:59. And she avoids him again. But he crosses the path. This is nice blocking here at 2:04. She wanted to like walk away, and he just cuts her off, basically. He holds her hand. She pulls away. And then she kind of has this temper tantrum here of a toddler. That's at 2:20-ish. And then this moment kind of doesn't ring true to me, that she blocks him. Like, is she convinced that they should stay together?
I do not know.
I love that she bounces the tennis ball like there's no problem. We just resolved everything. Yeah, so I think this is a pretty neat scene, even though it seems very simple. There's a lot of things you can discover. Also, like, big picture-wise, I think it's important to show that, like, in terms of the drama and the narrative, we have a character, George, who gets called in, and he starts off being really excited and well-spirited and feels like he's invited in, and the scene ends, basically, he gets thrown out and he's deflated. And on the other hand, we have a character who's really intent on, she's trying to break up with him, sort of, but it's the wrong decision for her. She knows it, and she tries to lie about it to herself. So in that scene, it really, you can see that process of her, and the tension is basically heightened in that scene, and it fits in perfectly with the narrative of the big picture, where we go next, what you described, and so on and so forth.
Right, and the other big picture thing is the way that the scene is set up is that, lying to George, everything's set up that he's just going to be effortlessly just lied to and sent on his way. Nothing goes the way that you expect it to, that's what drama is. It's just a constant series of expectations being set up and subverted, and it's a great example of that, and it throws things into chaos from there forth. And even the ones that do go the way you expect them to, like lying to Cecil, still has ramifications, so...
Yep.
A non-boring example.
Storytelling should always be plausible yet surprising. So whatever happens makes sense in the moment, and you believe it, but you didn't expect it.
Yes.
This was just a short scene analysis. If you like this, you should really dig into the podcast. There's a link that you can check out, which is thisguyedits.com/podcast, and it'll take you to all the different ways how you can subscribe to this podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go on a run, use it in your commute in the morning, and listen to us really nerd out on a scene.
And thank you to Curta for the music, and as Sven always says,
happy editing.